Well, I went to, it was an exhibition at Tate Britain called Gothic Nightmares. When I went in, the sort of centrepiece of this exhibition was a painting by Fuseli, The Nightmare. And the painting's of a woman lying on a sort of chaise longue in a sort of diaphanous nightdress type robe. And there's a goblin sitting on her belly. And it's big painting. It was such a striking image. And when I saw it, because remember I was very interested in bioethics and genetics and science and so forth. What's the nightmare? You know, what's the goblin in the nightmare? What's that about? I thought this could be a pregnant woman. And she's thinking about what would it be like to have a disabled child, because we live in an era where tests are available and you can have a diagnostic screening test or a diagnostic test. You can find out which child you're carrying. And so you have this pressure, responsibility and anxiety. Should you have the test? Should you have a termination? What would it be like to have a disabled child? What should you do? What's your responsibility? I'm very interested in that issue. Being the disabled child of a disabled father with 2 disabled children myself, those decisions implicitly or explicitly were part of my history. And I thought, well, I could just make that. Why don't I just make that picture, recreate it, but with me as the goblin? And so I had money from Nesta, so I could afford to pay people and buy and rent studios and stuff. And I took off all my clothes. I'd grown a sort of the best that I could do towards a beard. And I sat there sort of all hunched and sort of scowled and tried to make my eyes pop-eyed like a goblin. And then afterwards with Photoshop we put the image of me on the top of the image of her. And this is a hat of the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, which is the regional office of the World Health Organization. I suppose it's interesting to me because of the disability and health. My dad was a doctor, disabled doctor. I'm not a doctor, not a geneticist, but I work in the health organisation. And the sort of disability movement wants to say that disability is not a medical issue, and it's not. But if you've just suffered a loss of a limb in an earthquake, it is. And if you are paralysed in a developing country and your life expectancy is 2 years, it is a health issue. So I suppose I'm interested in the extent to which disability is not a health issue, because it's about culture and society and all the rest of it, but for many people, and for all people some of the time, it bloody is a health issue. And the book is sort of twofold. One is sort of, it's me, I read books, what I do, I write books, I read books. But I'm interested in disabled revolutionaries, and I said earlier that I was very interested in Gramsci, who was an Italian Marxist revolutionary who was disabled, and Che Guevara, a real icon. There is no greater revolutionary than Che Guevara. And he was disabled, he had asthma. So I'm reading this book to understand more about his life and his asthma. One of the interesting things I found in the book is where it says Cuba was the worst place for an asthmatic to go. I suppose because it's hot and damp. And he didn't like being seen with his inhaler. And it was really nice to do something creative. Not just be the person who goes to the office and reads and writes, but to be the person who expresses creatively and emotionally.